My name's David Hooler. First off, I want to thank the Guild for allowing me this opportunity to do a talk on kitchen knives. It's a topic that's very close to my heart. A bit of my history: I was a professional chef for 8 years in my early 20s, but had to make that call between wife or career, so I got out the industry. For the last 5 years, I have been dabbling in knife making. So I come from both schools. I understand how they've used, how the industry they've been used in, and also a bit on how they should be constructed, and the edge geometries and constructions going on with kitchen knives. So the first thing I'm going to start off with is the basic chef knife, which we call an 8-inch chef knife. Chef knives are sort of measured by blade length. So from tip of the point to the heel, that's the designation given to chef knives. Your workhorse, most produced, most used chef knife in the industry is an 8-inch. So kitchen knives, as far as custom knife makers go, they're not very popular. You don't see a lot of them. But if you think about it, a kitchen knife is the most produced knife in the world. I guarantee you, in a 1 kilometer radius of this building, there are more kitchen knives than there are upstairs. Every single house, every single restaurant, any place that produces food uses a kitchen knife. So let's start off with a few classifications of chef knives. There are 2 main styles of chef knives. What we call our Western style chef knives, and we do a Japanese style chef knife. Besides construction, you're looking at the top, you've got a forged integral bolster. Same with the second one. The bottom one, you've got what we call a wire style handle, which you usually see in Japanese kitchen knives with the stick handle. That's not the classification that's the most important. What we talk about is tip orientation. So if you have a look at the top one, which is a classic German style chef knife, if you take a line of that heel, and you take a line and you go all the way across, you'll see the tip is well above the center line of that. What that causes is a bit more belly over here. What that belly does for a Western style of cooking is help you get more of a rocking chop. We'll just see just now. It's going to be a little bit hard to see with the orientation here, but I'll go through it. It's more of a rock than a chop. Okay. The second one is a French style chef knife, otherwise known as a Sabatier. What a Sabatier does, the tip will be dead center for the most part. So once again, if you take the height of the heel and you draw a line straight across, you'll see the tip is square in line. Then when you look at the bottom one, that's what they call a gyotto, which is a Japanese chef knife. Rough translation is beef sword. But what you'll find with that is the tip's always going to be below that center mark. Okay. So that's pretty much the classifications of, if you're looking to identify what type of chef knife you're working with, you look at the tip orientation, not necessarily the aesthetics or the construction. The main thing really is that tip orientation, and that will affect the way you cut and use the knife. Okay. Edge geometries of chef knives. For the most part, most chef knives are double edged, okay, like any other knife. There's a common misperception when people think about Japanese chef knives that they're all a chisel ground, and that's not true. There are a fair amount of chisel ground knives in Japanese kitchens, but they have very specific purposes and uses. Okay, so here we're looking at a standard flat grind, which most guys will understand. But my advice to guys, if you're looking to make kitchen knives, don't go for a dead flat grind. Okay, it really works like a wedge. They don't cut well. You get your food release is terrible, food sticks to the sides of the blades. So what I always recommend to guys who are looking to get into chef knives is really try to do a whole convex along the whole profile of the edge. So you actually want your spine to be a little bit thinner. So with my chef knives, you'll find that the thickest part of the knife is actually about 5 mils down from the spine, because I actually grind in my distal taper. Okay. Now, going on to edge geometries for a chisel ground knife. Most guys think of a wood chisel when you talk chisel ground. Flat on one side with a grounding bevel. Where actually the fact, if you look, so this is an example of a yanagiba, which is used for generally fish processing, sushi, that kind of stuff, fine slicer. Now, this is where so what you're looking at actually, because obviously they do a lot of candid steels, which I'm not going to get into because I'm not the expert on that. But what you'll see, the main factor is there's actually a hollow running on the flat side. So here's a commercially available global. So on this part here, there's actually a hollow. And that comes from when you guys look at actually how these blades are ground. They're not ground on conventional bolt grinders like we use as knife makers. They're ground on big 1 meter diameter wheels, which gives you very shallow hollows. So they actually do a very shallow hollow on the back side of the knife. Okay, you'll actually see the hollow down there. A lot of people think it's for food release, which to an extent it does help with that, but the main purpose of it is actually for sharpening. With a chisel ground knife, obviously you mainly removing material on the back of, on the bevel itself. But you also want to try to chew it up. So you'll see where it's perfectly parallel, that little facet over there, and that little facet over there. So you actually put the back spine, well, the back side of the knife flat on the stone and you move it up and down. What that does is helps with only removing material from the top and the bottom. You don't have to hug away at all the material on the whole side. So it actually makes sharpening a little bit easier. So that is the main purpose behind that hollow. Okay. And obviously we got the chisel over there. So that is the one aspect that I never really thought of when I was working with knives and you spoke about chisel grounds. But there's actually quite a very subtle hollow at the back there. Most people think it's for food use, but it's actually for sharpening. So that is the chisel ground edge geometry of a Japanese chisel ground knife. Okay. The other grounds or edge geometries you'll see in kitchen knives is what they call a scalloped chef knife. What they mean by those scallops is those little divots that have been taken out the blade there. The idea behind those is to stop food release. Personally speaking, and this is my personal opinion, food release is a very overrated aspect of a knife. To choose a knife based on that is a bit silly if you ask me. So it's mainly to form an air pocket in the knife, so things like potatoes, your starchier vegetables will peel off a lot easier and they don't stick to the blade while you're trying to cut. But what most of the guys do in the custom world is what we call an S grind. Okay, where they actually, it's a exaggerated fuller in an essence, where you can actually see there's a hollow ground into the blade. Generally how they do those is on a radius plat. So they actually have a 32-inch diameter platen in an essence. So instead of having a flat platen, it's got a slight, well, not a slight, but a 32-inch radius on it. And they use that to actually help with food release. Okay? Next up, okay, we're going to talk about the cutting demo. Now, before we even talk about knife selection, how to hold the knife, do anything with the knife, the most important aspect for me for cutting. Yes?
Sorry, on the food release, that's assuming most people are right. You're holding your bulk there,
Yes.
slicing that way.
Yes.
Don't you want it to release on that side rather than this side?
So, food release, are you talking with regards to a chisel ground blade? Specifically, so what you'll find
with like the scallop blade.
okay, the scallops I'll have them on both sides. Okay, so they're both sided. One thing I didn't mention on the Japanese chisel ground is they are left or right hand specific. Okay, so, and I've done this before, you don't ask a client if they're left or right handed, they order a yanagi bar from you and you ship it off to them and they go, oh, it doesn't work. Because they really are left or right handed, so you need to bear in mind with that. So pretty much this would be a right handed chisel ground, okay, with the edge on that side and the flat will go against the food you're cutting. So what will happen is this side goes down and this will actually peel it off. Okay, so bear in mind with chisel grounds, left or right handed specific. Okay, the one thing, and I think it's very underrated and people don't put enough attention into a decent cutting board. Okay, you really can't expect to do decent quality cuts if your cutting board isn't up to scratch. Obviously we know glass, ceramic, all those, no, don't do that. So I recommend a decent hardwood cutting board. End grain's usually the better, the best. It's got good weight to it, they don't warp as much, so they stay nice and flat and stable. Plastic's also nice. There's always contradictory information. Some people say plastic's more hygienic because you can wash it with chemicals and stuff like that. Other people are saying wood's actually more sort of hypoallergenic and stuff and it actually won't develop bacteria and it's actually more the healthier board. So I'm not going to put my name out there. I prefer a wood cutting board because I just think it's a little bit more gentle on the knife. First thing you want to make sure is that your cutting board is stable and is sitting flush. This one's quite nice, it's not wobbling around, but generally the best and easiest thing is a damp dish towel, some paper towel, moisten it, put it underneath the cutting board, and it just stops it from sliding around and keeping it nice and flat. Alright, so cutting board, really pay attention, try to get something decent. If you're going to buy a decent knife, buy a decent cutting board. These are kindly supplied by Art of Wood, so Maurice does have a few on his table if you want to go have a look. They're very reasonably priced, but they're stunning, hard, decent cutting boards. Okay, other thing is work area. Make sure you're not cutting in yourself. You know what you're doing, you've got your veg prepped, you know what you're going to be cutting, and everything's over there. You don't want to cut yourself, especially your cutting board. While you're working, try and move the stuff off your cutting board. Because end up you chopping, You got another productivity, and next thing you only have a 10-meter section of board to chop on because your chopping board's full of food. Work and clean is what we always say in the kitchen. It's one of your main things. So work and clean. Okay, we're going to get into grips and how to hold a chef knife after this little discussion, because there is sort of different styles that people hold chef knives. But the one constant across all of them is this grip here. Okay, the main thing to really understand here is you do not want your fingertips protruding above the edge. You'll see how that edge is running up and down his knuckle and his fingertips are bent back. I talk from personal experience. I partially amputated these two fingers in the kitchen with bad cutting technique. I think it was about my 3rd month into cooking school. So you learn very quickly to tuck your fingers and keep those away, especially your pinky and your thumb as well. So we call it the claw. You really want to keep any digits from protruding over the edge. So that is a constant across all styles of chef knives. That's the way you're generally going to hold any item of vegetables or meat or anything that you're cutting, to keep your fingertips away. So if you speak to any decent chef and most enthusiast cooks, how do you hold a chef knife? And they'll all tell you the same thing, the pinch grip. You do not hold a chef knife like a hammer or a typical any knife. You're actually going to be holding it further forward over the bolster in a pinch grip. So you can see the thumb will rest on one side with the hands coming underneath. Okay. Design aspects, if you guys are looking to make chef knives, don't look at a sort of conventional drop point hunter, sort of, you know, they've got that hourglass look to them. You want to move that bowl just a little bit more forward because you're going to be holding the knife forward. So when you're looking at your handle designs, bear in mind that your hand's going to be further forward than a normal hunting knife or your general utility knife. Then I came across this is actually a screenshot from the video I'll watch. If we have time, we'll show at the end of the show. This actually changed my mind on how things. I was always a bit of how you hold a chef knife. That's how it's been done. That's how we got taught. Came across a video on the Japanese style of holding chef knives. Okay. And the funny thing is, I sort of made this discovery a little bit before, but I never really put any thought into it when I decided to try and make my own Japanese-inspired chef knife. Is I found myself as well, sort of holding it with your finger running down at a 45. So it's not directly on top of the spine, you're actually canting it over, and your finger actually runs along this top sort of bevel of the Italian handle. The idea behind that is it keeps your wrist in a much neutral position. Whereas if you're holding it like that, you end up gonna you cant your wrist up and you actually tire out your muscles, and it actually gets quite fatiguing while you're chopping. With this technique, it's a little bit more relaxed. Your wrist is in a natural position. Okay, this table's a bit low. You've got to remember counter heights are a little bit higher. So this is actually a much more calm, relaxed, more precision sort of work. Saying that, there are quite a few ways to hold chef knives. It really depends on what cut you're trying to do. Okay, so those are the two main grips you're looking at. But to be honest, you can get away with a pinch grip 99% of the time. It really works. It's used by chefs all over the world. There is no real right or wrong, but a pinch grip is the more preferred way to hold it. Okay, some of the basic cuts. I think gone are the days in cooking schools where they actually teach you the proper old school French names of how to do these things. So we're looking at fine brunoise, small dice, julienne. These are the kind of cuts, but I can tell you we never learned the names when I was at cooking school. If you had to do prep in the kitchen, your sous chef would come up to you and give you an example and go, I want your carrots cut this size. There you go. And you start cutting, and you'd pop by every 30 minutes and just start doing samples to make sure that you were keeping to the standard. Because it's very difficult to sort of say, you can't sit there and go, okay, I'm going one and a half bowl by 1.5 bowl. It's not feasible in the kitchen, especially when you've got 2,000 people outside at a buffet and you're trying to prep, and you really don't have to put too much effort into, but uniformity is the main thing. If you're trying to do a cube, try to keep it a cube. But I'll show you, especially with the tomato, there's easy ways to actually do these cuts to make them look so much better than if you just go and hack at it. But we'll get into that. There's a few more other cuts that you'll get through, and most cooking schools, this cut here is, I keep using that thing. That is the one cut there that will actually teach you the basics of cutting. It's what we call a cheffenade, which I'll show you on the lettuce now. It's a very fine slice, very close. It really sort of develops that muscle memory. And muscle memory is important when you're looking at cutting skills, which we'll get into now. Okay. So, for example, let's start off with the cheffenade, with the lettuce. So So a little trick for guys, most guys will sit and peel an iceberg lettuce, but actually you just whack the bottom and the core pops out like that. So that makes life a little bit easier. Now, when you're going to start cutting something, you want to try and make it as efficient as possible, especially when you got to, I worked in the States and I had a Hungarian chef that you did not want to upset because he was an ex-professional wrestler and he was the size of a walk-in freezer. So you want to try and work as efficiently as you possibly can. So for example, you're going to do a chef and hard cut. The best thing to do, us Durban oaks are really good at rolling these things up. And you actually want to roll it into a tube like that. The same with cabbage, spinach and things like that. Okay. Now, I know you can't really see what I'm doing. If you want to stand up, feel free, come have a look-see. But what you can actually hear the difference in the cuts I'm doing. So I'm going to start off with the traditional sort of roll chop, which we use for most sort of Western style chef knives. I'm actually going to do it at a conch here. You're going to see, you can't really hear, and the thing is, this is what I'm talking about, muscle memory. I'm busy chopping and I'm not looking with them. And consistency is all there. We got very fine, decent chef on our lettuce. Now, what you'll see, generally in a lot of the Japanese knives as well, they'll do more of a chop. So it's the same principle, same grip, but now they're doing that. And once again, looking at muscle memory, my fingertips are nowhere near, I know they're safe, and all I'm doing is just slowly itching your way back. And you end up with the same product. So, two different cutting techniques, same end result. You really need to find what works for you, and how you want to cut, and what you feel more comfortable with. Okay. Alright. So that's the cheffenade. Okay. Now, there's a principle in cooking that we call top and tailing. Okay. What they mean is cucumber, baby marrows, things like that. A top and tail is you'll take off the root, you'll take off the top, and you'll take off the bottom. Okay, so you just sort of, especially like baby marrows, they're the best example. You're going to cut off the stalk and things like that. So you'll hear guys talk about top and tailing, that's what that means. Now, the number one advice I give to people if you're going to start cutting something, especially round objects, potatoes, peppers, things like that, is you want to give yourself a firm base to work off of. You don't want food wobbling around, slipping, rolling around, because that's when you end up losing fingers. Okay. So, for example, a standard cucumber, we're just going to slice down. You've got a nice flat base, it'll sit there. And we can end up doing the same. Either you can do that roll chop, or you can do the up and down slice. The other option is, what some guys do is it's what we call a pull cut, where you're actually just going to pull along like that. Ooh, that was almost a knuckle. All right. So things like a tomato. Now, I top and tail a tomato like my mom taught me. I cut off the top, cut off the bottom. My chef almost threw me in the walk-in. Food cost is the most important thing to a chef. We want to know how much food's costing us, and kitchens work to a food cost. So to maximize yield, things like this. Now you can use a paring knife for this, and that's what a paring knife is designed for. Sometimes you're busy in the kitchen, you don't have time to run around. So what we do is you can actually utilize your standard chef knife, you choke up on it, and all you're going to do is pop it in there, cut around, and you remove the core. Same thing works for apples and things like that. So it's actually a very useful knife. It's not just designed for one aspect. If you know how to use it and incorporate it, you can do a phenomenal amount of work with this. It's a very versatile knife. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the brunoise cuts and how to make them neat. So for example, we'll do two examples, and I'm going to invite you guys up to look afterwards. You tell the average person just to cut some wedges, and then they'll end up doing that, and that's how they dice a tomato. Okay. And now you've got seeds and all kinds of rubbish in there. Not ideal. Not the most neat. You're not going to find that in a Michelin star restaurant. So what we're going to do is, same process. We're going to do a wedge, but what we're actually going to do is remove the core. And then you're left with a nice flat square. And then you're going to cut into your strips like that. So this is where the pull cut, for this delicate sort of gentle cut. You can still do it with a sort of roll chop and stuff, but I find the pull cut for myself just works a little bit better. Now that I've cut it into fingers, you can do the same principle of just slicing it down like that. And you'll see the quality of the end product is chalk and cheese. I'll put the next to here. for you guys to actually have a look about the difference of just thinking a little bit. Same thing with peppers. You're going to go through there, down the side. Right. That's how most people would prepare a pepper. But now if you're going to talk high-end fine dining, they'll take it to another level where you want uniformity, where they'll actually take off another thin little slice. A bit more. And now all of a sudden, now you've got uniformity across the cross-section, you don't have a white pith. So you can really get finer details with these type of cuts and slices. Once again, you can do the same. You can cut into julienne, brunoise, anything along those lines. All right. So that's pretty much the cutting demo. But once again, guys, this is a practice game. I've literally spent thousands of hours behind cutting boards. This knife here was actually my very first chef knife that I ever bought. I think I was about 18 at the time, bought it at Shop Edge in Sandton, Victorinox. I'm a Victorinox man. If I'm going production, this for me is the best knife you can possibly own. But literally, this knife has cut tons of vegetables. And it's not an exaggeration. I've had 8-hour shifts where I've processed and cut 300 kilograms of vegetables, and that's just one day. You put that over 9 years, and this knife has cut tons of vegetables. Okay, so that's pretty much going through the cutting and, all right, now design. There's no hard and fast rules here, by any means. Bear in mind, if you're going to classify your knife, this is a Western style chef knife, this is a Giotto, this is a Japanese style chef knife. You've got to bear in mind that tip orientation and where it lies on that center line. Now, heel heights. This is sometimes where I see some guys lose it a little bit. What we refer to as heel height is this section over here. Okay, so that's the heel. The main design thing is when you're chopping, you don't want your knuckles to be coming into contact with the chopping board. You want free movement all the way on. If you've got a little knife, this one's actually well designed, but it won't do it, but you're going to end up bashing your knuckles and you won't get good clearance going through your vegetables. Especially when you're slicing things, you're going to end up, they're sort of partially cut and they sort of stick together and they're not separating correctly. That's generally because either this section here isn't 100% flat or the knuckle clearance isn't great. So one size is, and for the guys who are interested, heel heights vary. Sort of average heel height is about 45 mils to about 50 mils. So that height there. They can go all the way up to about 60, 65, but obviously it's quite a serious size knife that. Okay, handle constructions. I've got a couple slides which we'll get into those. It's your personal choice. I'm not going to say there's a right or the wrong way. Generally you'll find in a Western style chef knife, it's a forged integral bolster with pins, whereas your Japanese style will be a stick tang into an octagonal or D-shaped handle. Pros and cons to each. I can remember I watched a documentary, Global, it's probably 10 years ago, Global started coming out into the international market, there or thereabouts. And they were the knife to have. They had the styling, they were Japanese made and all that kind of stuff. And Global had been going in Japan for years. But now they decided to branch out into the Western world. And they made the knives like they always did. And they sent them out there and all of a sudden they just got comeback after comeback after comeback after comeback. Handles are breaking, falling apart. And they couldn't understand why, because nothing changed. They were doing the same process. So they sent their experts off to the West, and they walked in there and they saw these guys just absolutely abusing these knives. Japanese people, there's a couple hundred, well I wouldn't say a couple hundred, but well over 100 different styles of chef knife. Each have their own specific task. You have an eel knife, you have a knife for this job, and that's the kind of volumes. And so they're used to delicate cuts. You'll watch a guy break down a tuna. You'll use one knife to do this, then you'll pull out another knife to take off the bone, pull out another knife to do this. They each have their purpose, whereas a Western style chef, we got one knife, and that's what we use. And they just realized, because literally the guys were just whacking, and they had to change their whole construction method just to stop the guys from breaking their knives. Still a phenomenal knife, nothing wrong with them. So it's just one of those interesting asides. So handle construction, really up to you. Next up. Okay. So here we're looking at a sort of typical set of Western style chef knives, barring the Santoku over there, but we'll actually get into that. It's a very interesting story that I only heard in the beginning of the year. So as you can see, what we'll have is a paring knife. So, example, small little blade, delicate work, taking off the little ends of strawberries. You want to take the ends of tomatoes, paring knife for that. Boning knife, okay, not to get confused with the filleting knife, they are slightly different. Boning knife is definitely, it's rigid, it's not designed to flex. This is designed to get into joints, to break down, get through tissue, scrape along bones. By all means, not a sharp knife. I don't like a razor sharp boning knife. You know, you in close quarters, you're pulling meat away, you got a razor sharp knife, you slip, you're going to lose a finger. So even if you go to major butchery, you won't find that the knives are horrifically razor sharp. But what they try to put on there is a very toothy edge. So we're looking at little micro serrations. If I was going to sharpen a boning knife, 220 grit, maybe 400 grit, call it a day. I won't even bother stropping it. Maybe get the burr off, but I'm not going to try and mirror polish the edge. There's no need for it. And especially with a knife that's going to be contacting bone, hitting against joints, a super fine edge isn't going to get you very far. This is an interesting one, and this story I heard from Daniel O'Malley from Blade Gallery. In my life, probably the only person I could really sit and chat kitchen knives to. The man is just a wealth of knowledge. So how this knife came along, and we all know this knife. We've all seen celebrity chefs use them. Rachel Ray made them popular in the early 2000s. Everybody had to have a Santoku. How it started is turn of the century in Japan, very cosmopolitan. They had chefs from Germany, they had chefs from France, and all over the place. Standard kitchen gowns in Japan is 300 mils deep. Okay, 8-inch chef knife, but it's a little bit more than 300. So what the guys were doing, they were actually snapping the tips off their knives on the back because their knives were too big for the kitchen they were using. So how do you correct a broken tip on a chef knife? You can't grind from the edge up because all you're going to do is stick in the edge. Doesn't work. So take it from the point down. Hence how you got that drop point there. So if you actually look at, so there's a pretty close example of a French chef knife with the point running there. Belly profile, exactly the same, and all they've done is actually just grind from the spine down. It's a beautiful little knife. I had a flick with these things because I thought, it's a female, it's a little baby knife. You know, I want proper. You know, this is a 300 mil chef knife. And people, even I have professional chefs are like, dude, why do you need a knife so big? You got a whole pumpkin, you got a whole watermelon, you got butternut. Things that little guy won't handle, that's why, literally I pull the side for that. You go over a pumpkin, one side, boom. Break it down into smaller pieces, then you can pull out your 8-inch and start working those. Okay, so then we've got standard 8-inch chef knife there. Interesting one, Santoku's, usually blade length is about 165 to about 180. So they actually do have a sort of set standard for those. Your bread knife, I haven't made a bread knife yet, I don't intend to, that is a lot of work to do, hand serrations. But main purpose of a bread knife, obviously bread, cakes, pastries, certain vegetables actually come together. You'll notice iceberg lettuce is one of them. If you cut it with a serrated knife, you actually get less oxidation, it goes brown a little bit less faster. So we actually use a serrated edge for that. Carving knife / sort of utility knife. That one over there, I classify that as a tomato knife. Most people like to cut tomatoes with serrated edges, but if your knife's sharp, you shouldn't really need it. Okay, then we're going to look at, right, there's a set of standard chisel ground chef knives. At the top there, we've got a Yanagi bar, the Deba. The Deba for me is a conundrum that I still need to make one to understand how it really works. That is their fish processing knife. You go to a Western chef, you give him a fish, you say, please break this down for me. He's going to pull out a filleting knife. Okay. 2 seconds, I forgot to get mine. I'll show you quickly. And even, I come from the coast, I'm an avid, or used to be an avid fisherman before I found the knife making addiction. And even when I talk to my fishing buddies, a filleting knife is what they use. Generally a filleting knife, we all know what a filleting knife is. It's got some flex to it, so you can get in there. Needle point, super thin, 2.5 mil stock. It really is a thin knife. The drawback to it is though, when you actually start taking your fillets and you've got pin bones and scale bones, the knife doesn't have the beef behind it to actually get through those. Now, a Deba on the other hand, that blade is 8 to 12 mils thick. It is an absolute slab of a knife. Chisel ground, they're quite stout, about the same as the Santoku, about 165 mils. I'll show you some videos of a Deba being used, and you'll actually understand the weight behind that just glides through bones, and it actually does a phenomenal job of processing fish. The one below that is a suba, also chisel ground, generally used for, there's a ribbon cut. I'm going to mess up the pronunciation, but it's katsusa muri, which you actually see, you'll see the guys, especially sushi chefs, do it with the cucumber, and they literally peel off a thin layer. I've got some videos which will talk about that as well. Literally that knife is specially designated for that cut alone. That cut, which I'll show you in your guide, will make more sense. If you can't do that cut in a Japanese kitchen, you're not going to get very, you're going to end up staying as a dishwasher. There's a video which discussed the grips where when you go to Japan to become a chef, you actually have to go to their culinary school for 3 months to do an internship. And they had a Michelin star chef. Now, for the guys who don't understand kitchens, Michelin star is, it's like the KGSA and then some. It is absolutely the rock stars of the kitchen world. And this guy was a sous chef in a Michelin star restaurant. You know, he could choose a job wherever he wanted. They kept him as a vegetable peeler and a dishwasher because he couldn't do that cut. Because it's not something that the Western chefs are used to doing. Whereas the Western guys who could do that cut excelled, they overtook him. So they can be very specific like that. Okay, now we're talking about handle constructions. And this topic actually came up on one of my knife groups yesterday. Okay, for a Western style chef knife, they generally drop forge. Okay, drop forge pretty much hot steel. They've got a various set of dies. They pop the hot steel in and they press it down. And each step gets it closer and closer to its final step. The major drawback, and I'm always a big proponent of Western style chef knife, is that little section right there, at the base of the heel. And from a safety point of view, I understand why they bring it all the way down. It's to stop your hands from going over to the choil and hurting yourself. The issue comes in with sharpening. You don't have a clean, flat edge to start your sharpening. So if you actually come look at mine afterwards, you'll see that I've actually had to grind this down as I go. Because a lot of guys don't. And then what happens is you actually get a bit of a recurve happening here because you're sharpening this a lot faster than you're sharpening the back section here. And it literally wrecks the action of the knife. Because all of a sudden, you've got this recurve there. You're not getting full contact with the chopping board. You're not getting all the way through your stuff, and you start getting frustrated, and you can't understand why you're trying to chop and the stuff is still sticking together. Because generally, you get a little recurve here because you're not taking down this section equally. Other options is they do injection molded handles, which you'll see a lot in commercial kitchens. Dishwasher safe. You say dishwasher safe. I still don't think a knife really belongs in the dishwasher. There's an ancient Japanese theory that they say when a Japanese bladesmith makes a knife, he puts a piece of his soul into that knife. You wouldn't put your soul into a dishwasher, would you? So generally what you'll find is injection molded or the drop forged with the pins. Japanese style, even though Japanese style, there's quite a few of the guys that do a forged with bolsters and it almost looks like a Western style knife. But obviously the tip orientation is a little bit down. But for the most part, you'll find what we call a Y-style handle, which is octagonal. For the most part, it's actually not a perfect octagonal. The sides on the knife here actually should be a little bit higher than any other facets, just so it slims it up a bit.